Hello, I'm Jack Pliny with the Kingman Public Works Department. We also have Burley Hambrick and Andy Bullock from our project management team here. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the downtown infrastructure design project. And to help us with that, we have our consultants, Dick Yano and Jason Harrington. The project scope for this is to complete a concept report and the final design for the redevelopment of Beale Street between 1st Street and 6th Street. With that, I'll turn this over to Dick and Jason for more information.
Thanks, Jack. I wanted to go through and give a project overview of what the project would entail, and then we're also going to get into some initial design concepts that we would like to get input on at some follow-on meetings. So the project is along Beale Street between 1st Street and 6th Street, and it extends north about a half a block to make connections up to Oak Street and then down to Route 66 to kind of tie it all together. The city's vision is to revitalize the downtown by improving the walkability, aesthetics for everyone, and also by maintaining the historic character of Kingman. So we want to create a safe, comfortable, attractive street for all modes of transportation, bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles. And then we also want to connect it down to Route 66. Some of the proposed improvements are going to include sidewalk, ramp, and driveway upgrades per ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. There'll be pavement improvements as well as improving crosswalks, pedestrian crossings. We'll be improving street lighting. Also drainage, we'll be dealing with drainage along the Beale Street and improving that, and also utilities. We also want to include some landscaping additions, wayfinding, street furniture, and some other amenities that Jason's going to talk about a little bit later. So the phase we are in right now is the public outreach phase. We've been dealing with the outreach part of it and the design concept phase of the project. We did a city council presentation on the 20th of October. We have a project website available, downtowndesignKingman.com. That's available to view project information. We're doing this presentation for viewing during November. And then we'll come back in December and get some additional feedback from stakeholders and the public December 9th and December 16th to start to gain solicit feedback that we can incorporate into the design as we move forward. And then in 2021, as we progress into the design, we'll be having follow-on meetings with stakeholders and the public at roughly the 30% design and the 90% design. Just looking at some of the existing conditions out there, the city has a nice gateway to Beale Street on the west end. The street is pretty wide, so we want to make it a little bit narrower to slow traffic speeds down. There is angled parking that we will look at maintaining. There's storefronts adjacent to the street that we want to provide good accessibility. Currently, there are some obstructions in the sidewalk area that is not consistent with Americans with Disabilities Act, so we want to be able to take care of some of those issues. The pavement needs some repair. So we'll be looking at that also as we move into the design phase. So now I want to let Jason get into some design concepts that we're proposing and get into a little bit more detail. Jason.
Great, thank you, Dick. We developed a few alternatives initially, and a recommended alternative identified as COB, option B, is what we're moving forward with our preferred concept. We're looking at narrowing the curb line from the existing curbs, maintaining the angled parking, and providing some additional shade for the parking, as well as addressing existing utility and infrastructure needs in the corridor. Our project limits go from 1st Street to 6th Street with connections down to Route 66. Part of the concept that we're looking at with the front angled parking and the narrowed curbs include different zones. So we have a pedestrian zone immediately adjacent to the facade of the buildings, which is meant for circulation and connectivity. We're envisioning a 8 to 12 foot wide condition, perhaps concrete materials, maybe a historic pattern, more of a commerce zone. Adjacent to that, we're looking at a buffer zone. What we'd be looking at is maybe some furnishings, bike racks, trash or recycle receptacles in this amenity area. Behind that, we'll have some shade for pedestrians, as well as some cooling effects for the pavements and the cars. That's kind of our landscape zone where we're looking at a combination of some theme trees and some secondary trees to provide seasonal interest as well. Perhaps these might be evergreen or even flowering in this corridor. Other features that we have are islands with LID, which is low impact development, to capture nuisance water. Green infrastructure for rainwater harvesting is what we would consider. And we'll create these with bump outs at intersections to shorten crosswalk conditions. We're envisioning a decorative crosswalk of some type to help visibility and create branding and identity in the corridor as well. We're also identifying new lighting facilities with our adjusted curbs for pedestrians and for the roadway environment. We're looking at also perhaps introducing electrical vehicle charging stations in the corridor to provide greater opportunities and to embrace green infrastructure. Other unique features about this concept include storytelling nodes, which are basically seating areas that maybe have historical facts or a piece of art or things like that that could be integrated into the concept itself. Our project also promotes a mid-block crossing to shorten people's activities and provide safety for people who want to migrate between both sides of the streetscape and improve safety as well in the corridor. So with these concepts that we're considering, a lot of these terminologies have some interpretive elements to them. So on our next slide, you're going to see how we've kind of created a 3D model of what we think might be a potential solution. The finishes and textures and materials are still a little bit ambiguous, so we're refining those. But this just kind of gives a better vision of what we have identified as a potential corridor alternative. The next slides show what some of these materials from our plan view could be with precedent imagery. So we look at what we call peer communities or communities that we aspire or have lessons we can learn from. Some peer communities that we've identified are Bend, Oregon, Prescott, Arizona, and Williams, Arizona. Prescott and Williams because they're in our climate and they're local. Williams also has affinity towards Route 66, so there's some branding and identity things we can learn from. And Bend, Oregon is kind of more of a same scale, same downtown experience that has a lot of features that we might consider to be successful for Beale Street. So we look at each of the images and we identify what we think might be practical elements that we can evaluate and maybe integrate as part of the Beale Street environment. With some of our keynotes, we've identified things like green infrastructure and bump outs, decorative crosswalks, potential parking alternative materials to promote green infrastructure, wayfinding features. And when we make these statements, a lot of people envision different things. So these graphics help people focus all on kind of the same considerations as we're looking through these. So in terms of bump outs, there are different techniques that could be utilized. And so we want to find out from the community which techniques might be more appealing than others. Same way for potential parking surfaces or wayfinding elements. There's lots of different ways that we can deploy these materials in Beale Street. On the next slide, you're going to see a little bit more of those terms and character elements that we find. For example, lighting. There are acorn type lighting. There are hanging bell lightings. There are more globe type lightings. There's even the potential to have solar as a lighting feature. Perhaps some of the lights include a speaker system that could be used to help program the street for special activities. Some of the character seating, we wanted to draw upon some of the successful elements that Kingman has already embraced, such as possibly branding with Route 66 or a locomotive or other types of mid-century elements that could be part of our storytelling element to be integrated into some of the site furnishings. When we say bike rack, it could be the traditional loop rack, a post rack, or maybe something that's commingled with a seating element to help maximize space. Other things that we would consider for other materials, you'll see here on this next slide, might be trash receptacles or how we define the amenity zone with different pavements or different furnishings. Perhaps the trees are in a tree grate or have enhanced below grade soils to help promote healthy trees and create a larger tree canopy. Other elements for an amenity zone might include decorative crosswalks and decorative sidewalks, not necessarily strict concrete, but a combination of materials. And how we deploy them where the orientation might be facing the direction of travel, might be facing the curb, might be facing away from the curb. There's lots of things to consider in our early concept stage. Parking for bicycles could actually be in the street pavement as well to help maximize more pedestrian zone and to reduce conflict between wheeled vehicles and people who are traveling by foot. Another element that we have might be the mid-block crossing, whether it's a stamped asphalt, a concrete unit paver, or just pavement paint. Those things can help brand an identity as well. Charging stations can also be different things. There are solar-powered charging stations as well as drive up. There's different technologies available too. Safety bollards are something to consider at intersections to kind of help promote safety, especially if we're looking at programming a lot of activities. That's just an added layer of benefit. Storytelling can become very interpretive. So one of the things that we would work with the town to help identify what message we want to tell or what part of the culture we want to embrace. And how can we do that with part of our features that we have to have anyway, like the pavements? Is there a way to integrate and commingle these things to help be very efficient with our budget?
Next, we want to talk about the project schedule. This gives you an overview of the entire project. We started in May. We did the city council presentation I mentioned in October. We've been working on getting survey and some geotechnical investigation, and most of it has been dealing with the design concepts that we've developed. We've also had some public meetings or public outreach with this presentation. We'll be following up with the follow-up meetings to gather input from stakeholders and the public. And then in 2021, we'll be moving into the final design phase all the way through August of next year is what is anticipated. And then as the city gets construction funding, the project would go to construction. So here's our next steps. We'll do the follow-up meetings on December 9th and 16th. So be on the lookout on the website for notices for that. You can also add comments through the project website, and those go back to the city project manager, to Burley, and he will distribute those to the team. And then we will have additional meetings in 2021. So that concludes our presentation. We thank you for viewing this, and definitely provide your feedback at the upcoming meetings and through the website. Thank you.